Let's get into it. Episode 702, Soul Not For Sale podcast. Now, there's been a girl who is going through what I like to call a 9-to-5 crisis. And a lot of people have been grabbing this video of her and making a reaction. And I'm going to do the same, but you guys know me. I'm a JRE historian. So I got 2 Joe Rogan clips. I can connect Joe Rogan to any current event going on in the world. I've watched all the episodes. I'm deep in this, guys. Okay. So I got two clips that I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to show you is a girl going through this crisis. Then I'm going to play a clip with Joe Rogan and Sebastian Unger talking about modern society and why it makes people feel the way you're seeing this girl feel. And then I'm going to play something called A Quiet Life of Desperation, where Joe Rogan is talking about how to escape this feeling that this girl has and what modern society has done to us. I'm going to bring it all together, baby, because I've been seeing a lot of people doing videos on this girl, and I just think they're dead wrong about this. I think they're dead wrong. I don't think it's because this girl's lazy. I think it's because we've been subjected to something that is not normal. And I would rather see a generation of people wake up to this type of stuff than to just go along with it like so many generations have. Let's get into it.
I don't. Period. So that's why I'm all emotional. But like, am I so dramatic? It's fine.
Oh man, I feel like I'm watching like my daughter explain this to me, man. It's wild. But here's the thing. I'm going to play this clip for you right now. Just give me 30 seconds. She's talking about not having any time. Huge thing that people need. She's talking about showering, eating, going to sleep. She's basically talking about being like a robot. People don't like to do that. And I'm not saying it in this lazy way, like we should all just have all this free time. But what's happening with her right now is she's noticing how messed up this system is. She's noticing how hard it is just to work a 9-to-5. It's the exact reason why I choose to work 80 hours for myself rather than work 40 for someone else. Because it just takes over too much of my life. At least when I work the 80, I still got my life. I can go downstairs right now and see my wife. When I have kids, I'll be able to do the exact same thing and play with the kids a little bit, then go back up. Like, man, and then she's talking about dating. And it sounds funny, but what she's actually talking about is family. Because eventually she wants to meet somebody who she can have kids with. She's talking about relationships, something that people need or they're going to feel isolated. When people feel isolated, it's a very, very bad thing. Very bad thing, but easy to be manipulated when you feel isolated. And then she's talking about friends. I have no time for friends. What she's talking about is community, relationships, a partner, community. All of these things are vital to the human experience. And I'm so glad to see someone actually wake up to it rather than just go along like it's normal. I didn't go along. Anybody you're watching on YouTube didn't go along like this was normal. Any entrepreneur you see, any business you see standing, they all had this same realization. So I don't know why so many people are getting down on this chick when she's just doing what so many of us did. It was ridiculous. I saw Tim Pool's reaction to this. It was delusional. I saw Liberal Hive Mind's reaction to this. Delusional. I saw Matt Walsh's reaction to this. I was like, what are these guys talking about? It's ridiculous. All of them woke up. All of them just make videos on YouTube. Believe me. Hard job, kind of, but not really. Especially for the amount of money that those guys make. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're millionaires. Let's get into it. Modern society, why it makes us feel this way.
Interesting aspects of it was something that I didn't know about, which was the European settlers that had been kidnapped and were living with the Native Americans, and then when they were rescued, many of them wanted to go back.
Yeah, or they would go into hiding so they wouldn't have to be repatriated to colonial society. They wanted to stay with their adopted tribes, and there was also a lot of young white people, particularly white men, but young women too, who basically absconded across the frontier into tribal society. They fled white society. They didn't like it, and as Benjamin Franklin pointed out, we have lots of young colonials fleeing to the Indians, and we have not one example of an Indian, as they were called, fleeing to white society.
Yeah, that was one of the more fascinating aspects of it. I didn't anticipate that. I thought that there would be a lot of Native Americans that would be like, wow, this is a way better, look at all the food, look at the houses. And
I mean, they had plenty of food. You know,
Yeah.
they were they were a very successful society. In fact, they had better nutrition than the whites did, a more varied diet, and a much more egalitarian society than colonial society.
that was also interesting about it. When you were talking about the women that had moved in with the Native Americans and were expressing how much more freedom they experienced.
Yeah, I mean, Indian society, Native society wasn't crushed by Christian morality. So you could divorce, you could marry as a woman, you could marry whom you wanted, you could get divorced, you could do whatever you wanted. It was very, very egalitarian. What they've shown is that in societies where everyone is necessary for food production, everyone's more or less equal. And in agrarian societies, agricultural societies, industrial societies, you have large segments of the population, often women, who are not involved in food production. They're involved in reproduction, and so their equality goes down.
Wow. It's almost like society as we've created over the last couple of hundred years is almost totally incompatible with human genetics or with the human body or the human spirit or whatever.
Well, if you look at, I mean, genetics are complicated. I mean, obviously, on some level, modern society is very successful. We have 7 billion of us. But as wealth goes up in a society, as modernity goes up in a society, the suicide rate goes up. The depression rate goes up. Schizophrenia goes up in urban environments. They're not good for the human psyche. We evolved to live in groups of 30, 40 people in a harsh environment, totally interreliant on one another for survival. That creates a huge amount of equality within a group and loyalty within a group. That's what we are designed for genetically. Modern society allows the individual to be independent from the group, which is in some ways a great liberation. In other ways, it can lead to a profound alienation and depression.
Yeah, it's just a very confusing thing, it seems, for people to be amongst so many people, but to be alone.
Yeah, I mean, we're not wired to be confronted with strangers all day long. And I live in New York City, and I love New York City. But all day long, you encounter strangers, and you don't recognize anybody. So you can be alone in a crowd, which is not something that human beings have experienced until quite recently in their history.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the more disturbing parts about this idea that these people were kidnapped by the Native Americans and wanted to stay with them was that whatever that Native American life was, like however they were living, that just seemed to just resonate with them. It seemed to be what was right.
Well, we're wired to want to feel like we belong to a group. Native American society was sexually quite relaxed. It was quite egalitarian. In a hunter-gatherer society, you really can't accumulate wealth very well because these societies are often nomadic, so you can only accumulate as much wealth as you can carry, which isn't much. And ultimately, in societies like that, as in a platoon in combat, which is another part of my book, obviously, you're primarily valued for your contribution to the group. And that has been lost in modern society. People are enormously self-serving. Capitalism basically instructs us to do so. That's a whole other evolutionary imperative, which is also important. But in our society, it's way out of whack. So we are wired to serve ourselves, and we are wired to serve the group. And in a healthy society, those two are in a dynamic tension with each other and in balance. In modern society, there really is no group to serve, and it leads to a really profound sense of meaninglessness for a lot of people.
Yeah, I also found it pretty fascinating that when you were really young, when you were working, I think you said you were working construction. Is that what it was?
I'm trying to remember the story you're about to.
You were talking to. You were just saying that you were talking to someone you were working with, and they were telling you to slow down because some of us have to do this for a lifetime.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that story. Yeah. Yeah, I was on a construction crew. It was a highway department of my town, and a lot of these guys were kind of lifers in the highway department. Not a particularly challenging job, in a sense, but you were on your feet all day long in the sun or whatever. And so I was a young guy, and I wanted to.
So sorry. Let that clip run a little long because this guy is very interesting. His name is Sebastian Unger, and that's Junger. Very interesting guy. I believe he has a book called Tribe. And it's very interesting. But again, going back to the conversation they had, and right now I'm about to play a clip for you where Joe actually talks about the way out of this whole thing. You can't just go and get kidnapped by a native tribe right now. It's not something you can do. You might want to go to a homestead. But in the clip that I'm about to play you, Joe talks about it a little bit. You need a plan. But going back to what that girl was feeling, this goes right along with it. What they were saying, feeling alone in huge crowds. It feels like you're a part of a tribe when you go to work, but you're not. When you work at a bank versus when you say, let's say you're a part of a farm tribe, that tribe actually depends on you. They need you, right? There's only so many people in the tribe. Let's say it was a nomadic farm tribe, if that existed, right? They actually need you. You're actually very vital to that society. When you work at a bank, let's say, you have the illusion of that, but the second you decide to minus yourself, they fill your spot right away. Whereas the tribe will suffer. They actually do need you. You actually develop more of a kinship. There's an illusion of that when you're working at a bank, but it's not real. And something deep inside of us can feel that. Something inside of us knows these aren't really my people. This isn't really my tribe. We just kind of we're all coming here for money, Whereas with the tribe that I'm, hypotheticalizing, they actually need you. It's not for money. It's for food. It's for life. It's for lifestyle. You're not leaving them once you're done farming. You're actually going to take more than just breaks with them. You're going to finish. You're going to go off into the night with them. You're going to wake up with them. They're family. It's real. That's why these native people would kidnap people and they wanted to stay, because that native lifestyle that the white people, the Europeans, were exposed to was so different. There's so much more gratification, versus, you're going to, let's just make another example. You're going to a grocery store versus you actually hunt and capture a deer and you quarter it up and you do all the things and you bring it to people and you watch people eat it. It's amazing. Versus when you just go to the store and get it. Our reward system, something within that girl in that first clip I showed you, her reward system was out of whack. I have no community. I have no friends. I all I'm doing is eating and sleeping. I'm not really connecting with anybody. I go to work, but that's not really my family, and I can't see my family because it's out of whack. I'm so glad this girl woke up to that. Again, Tim Pool, liberal hive mind, Matt Walsh, their depictions of this girl were so crazy. Matt Walsh was on point a little bit. He was saying deep inside a woman, she's going to want to have kids and be a mom and all that. I agree with that. But Tim Pool was like, I stay in bed till 7:30 or 7:50, and then I wake up and I have coffee and I talk with my girlfriend, and then I have time to work out and play video games, and then I plan for the podcast and I work more than you do. I was like, what? Delusional. Listen, this is a tough job. It's not that tough. It's not that tough. Let's move on to the next clip. You know what I used to do for a living? I used to be a lumper. You know what a lumper is? I'll tell you really quickly. So you have 800 boxes. They all weigh 50 pounds and they all have to go into a tractor trailer. You got to do it by hand. They give you a manual pump jack. You have to do it within an hour because it's piecework. That's work. This is just really fun and gratifying stuff I do. That's it. I remember what work is. A lot of these guys online, they didn't go through real work or they just straight up don't remember it. All right. How do we get out of this whole thing? Well, Joe has a little bit to say about that. Let's go.
Good line, living life of quiet desperation. I mean, that just terrifies
Well, that's
me.
Thoreau's quote, that most men live lives of quiet desperation. It's one of my favorite quotes ever because it's true.
So
and I've been that guy.
Oh my God.
You're just in this world where you just can't wait to just run away.
And how do people get stuck there? How do you think they get stuck there?
Bills.
Bills, like financial bills?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
Bills and
interesting.
commitment. You have an apartment you have to pay for. You have a car you leased. You have a wife that you have to feed. You have a child you have to raise. You have to. You have your mortgage. You have your this. You have your that, and that's where it all comes from.
Where do you think opportunity plays into that?
Well, the opportunity takes place usually when you're young and you don't have any responsibility. That's when you have your options. Well, your options are severely limited the more you gather responsibilities. Like if I had to, as a 51-year-old father of 3, married man, pays taxes, has a house and a mortgage and a business and all that jazz. If I had to quit everything now and struggle the way I struggled as a stand-up comedian, it would never work. But the only way I could be this person now is if I took that chance when I was 21, when I was dead broke and had my cars repossessed and all that stuff. That's the only way you ever get where you want to go. You have to take a path that's dangerous. And most people want to take the safe path. And the safe path leaves you stuck in quiet desperation almost every time. It's hell. It's hell. You're selling insurance or some other shit that you care zero about.
But can people just make that change? I mean,
Yes,
look,
you can,
I believe they
but
can.
you have to plan it out. The way you can change is you have to put aside enough money to give yourself a window. And then you have to have a plan. And you have to spend all your waking hours outside of whatever shit job you do planning your escape. And you have to come to the realization very clearly that you fucked up and you got yourself stuck. So whatever you're doing, you have to do it like your life depends on it. And whether it is you're trying to be an author and if you're gonna try to be an author and you're working 8 hours a day plus commuting plus family responsibilities or whatever else you have, whatever time that you have to attack like you're trying to save the world. You're trying to save your life. You don't want to drown. That 1.5 hours a day that you have to write, God damn, you better be caffeinated and motivated. You got to go. You got to get after it. And you got to have discipline. Most people don't have those things. Most people don't understand what it's like to really go for something and to know that the consequences of not doing that are horrific.
Then you're desperate and you're quiet. But I do think there is something to be said for fate and circumstance.
Sure.
And I always write, I mean, people in these military environments that I write about and in these intelligence world environments, fate and circumstance plays a big part because they too can even get complacent,
Mm-hmm.
But when your life is on the line, right, a lot of times they have these experiences where they're like, I must change. And that's what I find really interesting in people.
Sure. Desperation.
That's what you got to do. That's the plan. You got to do that. It's really tough. And here's the thing. Nobody told that to this girl. No one said you have to have a plan and you have to take a risk while you're young. No one said that to her. No one said you got to figure out what makes you really happy. You got to really work towards that. It's going to be a rough road, but if you can get to the other side of it, you're going to be in a magnificent place. No one said that to that girl, and no one says that to this generation coming up or my generation or the generation before that. The people who end up escaping are just so happy they did that they never turn back to say, they'll turn back to their own kids maybe, but most of the time they just go. They get too busy. You got a business. I record every single day for like 6 hours a day, sometimes 7, sometimes 8 if I keep messing up takes and stuff. I have no time to tell anybody anything, only when I'm doing this. But somebody has to tell these young people that exact thing. That if you stay in the 9 to 5, you're going to go through this crisis of feeling terrible, and it's horrible and it's hard, and just don't do it to yourself. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to tell you're going to have to tell them that. You're going to have to fight for it. You know, I was gifted. I have an older brother who's much older than me. I think he's like 13 years, 12 years older than me. He's a very old guy. I hope he sees this. He's very old. And he's like a dad to me. And I was working as a forklift driver, and I said, I'm hating this job. And he is a marketing executive, and he was like, I wish I could do what you were doing. And I was like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Because I hated my job. I hated every job I ever had. But he said, I don't like what I'm up to right now. It's like, I'm just not into it. I wish I could work with my hands more. Because nobody told him when he was younger, hey, you better make sure you're really happy with what you're doing. You better think about how this looks 20 years from now. Think about who you are as a person. So he said that to me. He said, hey, you better make sure you're legit happy doing what you're doing. You better make sure that this is the thing you actually want to do. Because at the time I was doing forklift and I was looking into coding and all sorts of weird stuff that I do not do anymore. But he's like, make sure. And every single day from that day, everything I looked at, I said, okay, what does this look like 15 years out? And am I going to be happy as that person? I was gifted that. You know, he did the thing that people need to do for girls like this. Right? And then I got another gift. My dad was on his deathbed. He didn't die, but we all thought he was going to die. He thought he was going to die. So it was his deathbed, temporary deathbed. And he was like, you know, this is a relay race, and all I can do is give you the baton, and you have to go and do better than I did. And I was like, wow, okay. And that's exactly what happened. Soon after, he passed away. And I had to figure out what was better. And I had to look at his life, and I had to figure out what would be better. And I hope wherever he is, he sees this, and he's like, that's much better. It is. I know it is, but that's... the people before you have to tell you. Nobody told this girl. It's not that the generation coming up is just straight up lazy. It's that they're just misinformed. You have to inform them of what it takes to be happy, what it takes in order to have to carve something out for yourself. And it takes a lot of hard work. And it's going to be really hard, but it's going to be really great once you're done. Nobody told her this. They just said college. Somebody just said college to her, and she said fine. And they said maybe this, and she said fine. And she went through college. She went through it like everybody does. Like the cows, you know how cows go to the slaughter? They got this little track that they just run on. Someone just put her on the track, and she was just trotting along. And now she's feet away. She's a few feet away from the slaughterhouse, and she's like, hold on a second. I didn't sign up. What's going on? She's waking up. Man, I hope there are thousands of kids this age that wake up like this. Do you know how necessary this is? To wake up like this? To figure out? I've worked in a grocery store crying in the aisles. More tears than what this girl is displaying right now. Way more. But in the tears come the change. So you gotta thank God if you get to the point of where you're in tears over something, because you know that the change that you need to go through is not very far off. So thank God she's decided to make this video and to cry about this, because there's probably going to be some other kids that are going to see this and they're going to go, wait a second, I don't like this either. I don't understand. I was one of those kids and I figured it out. But I had the tears first, then I went through the life-changing things, and then I found the discipline, and then I found the things that actually make me happy, and it all came together. But it all starts with being upset, being tired of this. Anyways, guys, If you're not figuring it out, you got to go figure it out. If you don't have what you want, you got to try. You got to try. You got to. No excuses, just try. Do your best. Do your best. And even if you're old. I've told the story before. My mom was in her mid-50s when she decided to start a company, and it's done better than any company that any of us had. Now I'm getting up to her now with everything that I do, but up until this point, best business woman person in our bloodline for a century. And she started when she was like 55. You just got to have the change. Make the change. You know, you can do it. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. If you haven't hit that like button already, hit the like button. And other than that, I am out.